Welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered with your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I'm your host, Wendy Weiss. I am the founder of Salesology and the Salesology Prospecting Method. I'm also known as the queen of cold calling. And today we have a very, very, very special guest. We have Dr. Ivan Misner. And he is the founder and chief visionary officer of BNI, that is Business Network International. It happens to be the world's largest business networking organization. It was founded in 1985. The organization now has over 10,800 chapters in 77 countries throughout the populated continents of the world. Last year alone, BNI generated 12.4 million referrals, resulting in more than $18.6 billion worth of business for its members. Let me just say that again. 12.4 million referrals, resulting in more than $18.6 billion, with a B, dollars worth of business for its members. Dr. Misner's Ph.D. is from the University of Southern California. He is a New York Times bestselling author who has written 28 books, including one of his latest books, Who's in Your Room? He's also a columnist for entrepreneur.com, and he has been a university professor. Dr. Ivan Misner has been called the father of modern networking by both Forbes and CNN. He is considered to be one of the world's leading experts on business networking and has been a keynote speaker for major corporations and associations throughout the world. So welcome, Ivan Misner.
Wendy, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So I didn't know you were an expert in cold calling. So I'm going to tell you something almost no one knows about me, because they all know that I started BNI, which is a referral organization. But the truth is, the year before I started BNI, I was hired by a company to build a sales force. And I trained the sales force on how to cold call. So I became pretty darn good at cold calling. Mind you, I hated it. I'm sorry. But I got pretty good at it. And I also trained people how to get good at it. It can work very effectively. This said by the guy who's founded the largest referral organization.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting to me because cold calling is a very foundational skill. Yeah. It's just the ability to talk to people that you don't know and engage them is a foundational sales skill. Well, it's actually kind of a foundational life skill.
It is.
But the conversation about cold calling to me is often rather stupid, because the conversation about cold calling is often everybody hates it and then there's a handful of people that love it. Yeah. And to me, the opposite of hating it is not that you now love it. That's silly. The opposite is like you're neutral. You can just do what you need to do to grow your business.
Right. So, and listen, for a lot of businesses, especially new businesses, you got a cold call. And there's nothing wrong with cold calling. It's really quite effective. I think that, and here we may or may not part, I think that as you become more successful and you're building a book of business, you want to focus more on the referrals than the cold calling. And hence I created BNI. However, now I'm going to give you a counter argument to my own argument. I had an employee once who, not an employee, I'm sorry, I had a member of BNI once who had been in for like, 5 years in the organization. And she decided that, she had built up most of her business through referrals. She decided that once a month she would go out and cold call, even though she didn't need to do it anymore. She would go out and cold call just to remind her why referrals are so much easier. And so, but she went back out every month and would do referrals cold calling one day. just to kind of stay sharp and to remind her why those referrals were so important.
So I want to know actually, what's the backstory? How did you come to found BNI? And what brought you to where you are today? To give us the inside scoop.
So, I'd like to tell you I had this vision of an international organization with 10,000. We now have over 10,900 groups all around the world. But the truth is I needed referrals for my consulting practice. People don't hire a business consultant off of an advertisement. And so I needed referrals. I put together some people I trusted. I hoped they trusted me. And I wanted to refer their business. I hoped they'd be willing to refer my business. One group. That was it. I just wanted one group. And it was one person per professional classification. So I didn't want my competition there. And I felt my friends they'd be okay with not having their competition there. So we met and we're giving each other referrals. And someone came to that first group about maybe 6 weeks in. And she said, "This is amazing. I could get a ton of business out of a group like this, but I can't join because my profession's already represented. Would you help me open up my own group?" And one day I actually said, "No, this isn't what I do. I don't run a network. I'm a business consultant." And she said, "Well, this is kind of consulting. You're helping me build my business." I'm like, that's a stretch, but okay. And so we opened up a second chapter. And at the first meeting of the second chapter, 2 people came who couldn't join because of a conflict with the other classifications that were in there. And both of them said, "Wow, this is great. I could get a ton of business. Would you help me open up our own group? You'll do one, I'll do one." And I said, "No, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant." And they talked me into it. And we were just off to the races. At the end of the year, we had 20 chapters of BNI. And I wasn't trying. That was the point at which I realized we don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world. And that we need to teach people how to generate referrals, and that we need to provide a system to do it. And that's where I really sat down and created my plan to scale the company.
Well, I do want to ask you about how to generate referrals. But before I do that, I feel compelled to bring up one very interesting fact that I read about you this morning, which was that you were born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
I was, yeah.
And so was I.
Hey, fantastic.
So we are bonded. But
I was born, we left when I was 6 years old from Pittsburgh, but I was born on, and I used to say I was born on the South Side, and people from Pittsburgh were like, no, you're born on South Side. Okay, so I was born on South Side in Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. All I know is Pittsburgh. I'll have to ask. Anyways, so I think that just as we were talking about cold calling, and a lot of people don't like cold calling, a lot of people don't like networking.
Yeah,
and they don't like being the recipient of networking. They don't like to go to these functions. So I'd like to hear from your perspective. How does somebody go about doing this well?
Yeah. So I read an article a few years back, and I wrote a blog on it. You can probably find it on my blog. I don't know. It literally was probably 4 or 5 years ago. About I didn't name the guy, but the article basically was networking is dead. It's all about relationship building. And I read the article, and the article was like everything you should do to build a powerful personal network through relationship building, which, is like, okay, call it whatever you want. But networking, if it's done right, is about relationships. It's about building relationships. What happens, and the reason people don't like networking, is that their experience of it, either they're acting this way, or more often people are acting this way to them, is that it's very transactional. People meet you, "Hi, Wendy, my name's Ivan, let's do business," or "Buy my product, here's my service," or here's my favorite one, "Hi, Wendy, I'm Ivan, here's 3 copies of my business card. Maybe you can give 2 copies to someone else." And when people do that to me, it's like, "I'm sorry, what was your name again? I don't even know who you are, and you want me to give your cards out?" No. So Most of that's internal dialogue, but I do say, look, I prefer to get to know who you are and whether you're good at what you do before I start referring you. So my experience is that people who don't like networking generally have had bad experiences with it being done wrong. And networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. If you do it right, it's more about farming than it is about hunting. It's about cultivating relationships with people over time. And that's the way that you get referrals. And so now you take the opposite side of that. A lot of people say they don't like networking, yet I did a survey of 12,000 business people that I used in a book on networking and gender. And of those 12,000 people, and they weren't just B&I members, it was open to the public, the survey. Wendy, 91.3% said networking has played a role in their success. 91% said networking has played a role in their success. When have you ever seen 91% of any group of people agree to anything ever?
Never.
Never. Yet 91% said it's played a role in their success. Yet you and I both know some people don't like networking. Yet 91% say it's played a role in their success. So what I would tell people is focus on building relationships, not having transactions. And if you're focusing on building relationships, then you're doing networking right. And it's fun. It's easy. It's just about, building friendships with a purpose. The purpose is to help one another.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because one of the things actually that used to confuse me quite a bit, a business owner would say to me, I don't want a cold call because I want to build relationships. And I would go, what? Because the cold call is the introduction. You can't build a relationship with somebody that you don't know. So it's kind of the same thing if you're wherever you are, going to a networking, joining a BNI or going to another networking group or a conference or a trade show or whatever, you meet people, but then you have to build the relationship. So what are the steps in doing that?
Yeah. And look, you'll never hear me say, don't cold call, don't advertise. To me, those are different mechanisms of generating business. They're different tools in your tool belt. And so although I don't like, personally, I haven't been a big fan of cold calling. I've done it. I train people on it. So it works. That's a tool in your tool belt. Advertising is a tool in your tool belt. Networking is a tool in your tool belt. And you may use different tools more often than others. You may transition over time to using one more than another. Because of the economy, you may go back to one versus another. So there are a lot of reasons why you might use different tools. Your question is, what are some of the key factors? And I think the foundation for understanding how to network effectively is something I call the VCP process. VCP, it stands for visibility, credibility, profitability. First, you have to be visible. People they have to know who you are and what you do. Then you over time, move to credibility, and that's the one that takes time. Credibility is where people know who you are, they know what you do, and they know you're good at it. They may know you're good at it because they hear people talk about how good you are at it. They may even use your services. Remember, we're talking about referrals, not sales. So what you teach and what I teach is just slightly different in the sense that I focus on building relationships to get referrals, not to close a deal with the person you're networking with, although that's always good, but to get a referral from the person that you're networking with. So, I may be working with you and I know you're good because I've used your service. I haven't referred you yet. That's where you're at credibility. You're also at credibility if you and I know somebody together and we go, yeah, that person's really good, and here's why they're good. So you build credibility over time. So you go from visibility to credibility. Credibility then leads to profitability in a referral sense, meaning I've now done a decent job for you and you're willing to refer business to me, or vice versa. And that whole process takes time. And it's a part of what I call the time confidence curve. And different professions have a different time confidence curve. If you're a florist, the time confidence curve is pretty quick. You can move from, Visibility to credibility to profitability, referring a florist pretty quickly. If you're an investment advisor investing somebody's retirement income, the time confidence curve is long. It takes a long time to go through from visibility to credibility to profitability. Where networking goes wrong is where people try to jump over visibility, over credibility, and get right to profitability without building any relationship whatsoever. In one of my books, Wendy, we call that premature solicitation, which you don't want to say fast 3 times, it'll get you in trouble. But that's the foundation of what I teach, is you network to work through those processes. So when you go to an event and there's somebody you've never met before, well, it's time to have some visibility, meet that person. When you go to a networking event and you see somebody who you've known for a long time, hey, it's time to connect with that person and improve and increase your credibility with that individual. If you go to a networking event and you're at profitability with somebody, you're referring them, you touch bases and it's like, hey, how are you doing? What do you have going? What project do you have right now that I could help you with? Here's some things that I can help you with. It's a different dialogue when you're at profitability with someone than when you're not even at visibility with somebody. Make sense?
That makes sense. I was reading this morning on your blog, and also I've heard this a lot. That you start with this intention to help people.
Yeah.
I guess the question that I have is, you're at this networking event, you meet someone, what do you do? This is what I do. What do you do? This is what I do. You're chit-chatting, and then you say, how can I help you? And the other person says, I have no clue. Because people are not willing necessarily to tell you what's going on when they don't really know you.
Right.
Maybe that's the credibility piece in the middle that people skip.
Yeah, well, you don't go to that, how can I help you, very quickly. And you may not do it with every person that you meet. But when you're having an in-depth conversation with somebody, and I believe that a good networker has 2 ears and 1 mouth and uses them both proportionately. A great networker is like a great interviewer. Wendy, you're asking me questions, and then you're just giving me time to elaborate. See, that's what a great networker is. A great networker asks questions and gives a person time to elaborate. And so, you have, in a number of my books, I talk about the different kinds of questions, but you not just say, what do you do? Ask other questions about it. What do you love about what you do? What are some of your favorite clients? What are some of the aspects of what you do that you love? What is it that you're not real crazy about doing? What's a new trend in your industry? Is there anything happening right now in your industry that, you ask questions like this. Now, remember, it's a discussion, not an interrogation. So you don't jump from one question to another. It's like the limb of a tree. When you get an answer to a question that you find intriguing, follow that limb. Tell me more about that. Explain that more. Or I don't know what that product is. Describe that product to me. You get them to open up and talk more and more and more. Now, if you do that over it doesn't take long, 5 minutes, 10 at the most. And somebody has really opened up. And one of the last questions, I ask is usually, what do you absolutely love about what you do, which I already mentioned. I'll also ask, if I feel like they're comfortable with me now, what are some of the challenges that you've got with your business? And you get there only if you feel like that person's really made a connection or you've made a connection with them. And then when they tell you their challenge, that's the perfect time to say, how might I be able to help you with that? And you'd be surprised at how many times people have said, well, I need a good connection to somebody who does X, or I need to read up on this topic. And especially if it's a topic that I have some familiarity with, I'm like, I've got a number of articles that I could send you that might be of value to you. And you just look for a small way to help somebody. Can I tell you a quick? You've let me talk for a long time here, but can I tell you?
Go ahead. Go to it. Go to it.
I did. This is absolutely true. It was a live radio interview, on air live radio interview, and we're talking about the how can I help you? And the interview was going great. He loved all my content, but when I started talking about how can I help you, he really shut me down. He was like, "Oh, that old saying, that just never works. I can't believe you're recommending that. And I said to him, well, there are a lot of ways to do it that can be very, very effective. And he didn't agree. And so I didn't want to spend the whole interview in a disagreement with him. So we moved on to the next subject. Now, here's the beauty of it. At the end of the interview, we wrapped up. We were still on the phone together. We were no longer on air. And I said to him, hey, are you ever looking for other people to interview for your show? And he said, oh my goodness, I'm always looking for some other people. And so I named a few people that I knew and I knew well. And he said, oh my goodness, you know them? I said, yeah. Would you like me to make an introduction? And he's like, oh yeah, please make an introduction. So that day I emailed my friends, made the introduction. He thanked me profusely. And I wrote him back and I said, and that's how you ask, how can I help you? Without using the words, how can I help you? And he wrote back and said, touche, you're right. That worked great. So how can I help you works as long as it's not just another transactional thing, but you're really looking for a way to help them in a way that you can.
Absolutely. People can sniff out a phony.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, we're going to pause for a moment for a word from our sponsor, but then when we come back, I do want to ask you, first of all, just how or if networking has changed over the past few years with the pandemic, and then also about your new book, Who's in the Room.
Great.
So, but now we are going to pause for a word from our sponsor, Salesology, 81 tools to grow your sales and your business faster, more easily, and more profitably. Are you stuck because you can't find the right sales and marketing resources to help you grow your business? Or maybe you're sick of spending hours hunched over your computer researching and looking for what you need instead of selling and generating revenue. Or maybe you're just frustrated and confused because you can't find what you need at an affordable price. Well, never fear, because Salesology has you covered. We've done the research. We have vetted all the sales and marketing tools, so you can save hours of work because you no longer have to hunt for what you need. Download 81 tools to grow your sales and your business faster, more easily, and more profitably. It's free. Just click on the link in the show notes, and you'll be glad you did. And we are back with Dr. Ivan Misner talking about networking. So my first question for you, Ivan, is really, has this changed? Has your process or what you teach or the way people should be networking these days, has it changed given what we have gone through in the past several years and the fact that we can now network more online?
Yeah. Well, let me. I'll talk about the online in a moment, but let me talk about networking in general. I have seen a greater understanding of the fact that networking is about building relationships than I did in 1985 when I started BNI. I mean, I started BNI in 1985. Nobody had any idea how to network. It was, and I didn't know how to network. I was method acting my way through the process back in 85. I was 28 years old. I was trying to figure it out. What I found is that over the last 38 years, more and more people have been exposed to the fact that networking is about building relationships. And so I'm really pleased to see a better understanding, not a perfect understanding, because there's always new people coming into business and they're very transactional. So it's a learning process. But there's a better understanding of our philosophy of giver's gain. That's our principal core value in BNI. If you want to get business, you have to be willing to give business to other people. You need to help them. So that's improved. Now, technology. I wrote an article back in 2018 that's up on entrepreneur.com, still there. And it said, the future of face-to-face is online. And that was in 2018. Now, when I published that article, my organization was like, oh no, don't say that. oh, he's getting old. The old man's losing it. And there was all this pushback because we had 10,000 groups that were, well, in 2018, we had less. But when COVID hit in 2020, we had 9,800 groups. And the article wasn't about something like COVID. The article was about technology. So in 2018, I said the future is going to be online because we have more and more 3D technology in the works, the metaverse. We have holographic technologies. These things are within 10 years, they're going to be fairly commonplace. And I want BNI to lead the disruption, not be disrupted, like so many companies have been disrupted. Kodak is a great example. Kodak invented the digital camera. They had the patent on the digital camera, but they didn't want to mess around with their film processing. And one of their executives did a memo that said, besides, who's going to ever look at a photograph on a computer? And that was in a memo. And so, Kodak went bankrupt because they didn't lead the disruption. And so I wanted to lead the disruption. What I didn't see coming was COVID. Luckily, I kind of planted the seed that this is the future. And our CEO at the time, he's still CEO, Graham Weimiller, he saw COVID coming. And in January of 2020, he flipped a lot of Asia to online. Now, we had almost 10,000 groups. January of 2020, he flipped China and then India. And then in February, he flipped Italy. And by March, he flipped the entire world to online. So we went from 10,000 weekly in-person meetings to 10,000 weekly online meetings. And we did it in every country within just a matter of a couple of weeks, as we did every country. So I think it is the future. Now, what's happened since COVID, 68% of our organization has gone back to meeting in person every week. 16% has stayed online, 100%. And 16% of our organization has become hybrid, meaning they do one meeting a month in person and 3 meetings a month online. And in those months that have 5 weeks, they'll do 4 meetings online, but 1 in person, the rest online. 16, 16, and 68. So it's been a transition, but I think the future is going to see more hybrid chapters because, I got a lot of gray hair. People like me maybe aren't as fond of the in-person, but millennials have no problem with it. And centennials, the Gen Z, they have no problem with it. And I think that's the future.
That's very, very interesting, and how prescient to do that so quickly in January of 2020.
Yeah, my CEO gets the credit for that. Graham Weimiller, he saw it coming. He talked to me in early January. He said, this COVID thing is going to be big. I'm like, nah, it's just another virus. No big deal. Man, was I wrong.
Yeah.
I got the online thing right, but man, I was wrong about COVID.
Wow. So tell us about your book, Who's in the Room?
Yeah, so this is the second edition of Who's in Your Room. The first edition was about 15,000 words. This is 45,000 words. So we have really expanded it. So it's not one of those second editions where we added a little content. This is twice as much, 3 times as much as the original. So here's the concept of the book. It's not a book on networking, although it is a book about relationships, and relationships are about networking. Here's the concept. Imagine you live your life in one room, and that one room has only one door, and that one door is an enter-only door. So that when people come into your room or into your life, they're there forever. You can never get them out. Now, luckily, Wendy, this is a metaphor. But if it were true, would you be more selective about the people that you've let into your life?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what everybody says. So I would argue, and we argue, that it is, in fact, not a metaphor. It's real. And here's why. I want you to think